So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Colonel Ryan Morgan. I'm the director for ACM IBCT here at Fort Benning, Georgia, with the Maneuver CDID. And I'm going to be speaking a little bit here about the M and the L BCT ideas that we've been working on that are currently in TAA process. So a brief introduction here. We have, if you're not familiar, we have 4 formation ACMs here at Fort Benning, Georgia, for infantry, armor, striker, and then the SFAB team. And our sole responsibility is capability integration for the maneuver formations. And our responsibility to the maneuver force, brigade commanders, and division commanders is trying to get the best capabilities brought to their formation to make them better. As we talk about the transition from IBCTs potentially to the M and the L BCTs, a couple things here that we hold true at Fort Benning. And first of all, is the core mission of the infantry has not changed, and that is infantry battalions are to close with the enemy by means of fire, maneuver to destroy, capture, repel the enemy attack by fire, close combat, and counterattack. And that is not changed. Essentially, we're saying that maneuver BCTs are designed to end the firefight. So as we move into kind of the history of why we got to the M and the L BCT, General Rainey, when he was the commanding general at CAC at Fort Leavenworth, directed then General Hodney, who was the chief of infantry, to come up with an idea of making IBCTs, infantry brigade combat teams, lighter, keeping lethality with them, but being less dependent on the multitude of vehicles that were in the motor pools down at IBCT. So looking at commonality of vehicles, looking at getting them more strategically deployable and less dependent on other enablers inside the BCT. Reducing the span of control, not because of the capability of commanders, but wanting to focus in on being the best infantry formations that we could produce. So to do that, and as you see here on the slide, we have the problem statement we started with, discussing that keeping that most strategically deployable formation, increasing our tactical and operational mobility, and then still being able to being lethal enough to compete, deter, defeat enemy forces in the most complex terrain that we could fight in. And if you just saw General Abrams prior to this briefing, he was talking about, there was a question asked about operating in mega cities and dense urban terrain, and that is right where the BCT transformation to M&L is suited. A few other things we talked about here is when we did this actually started before the whole idea of division's unit of action came into being. So we were on the leading edge of that. But then as we saw how the Army was going to go, and we got some direction on reinvesting as the division as the unit of action, providing the resources to that organization, understanding that the BCT, as we changed it, we weren't changing it to make the BCTs better. We were transforming these BCTs to make the division better. The division has to enable its subordinate brigades, whether that's the maneuver brigades or aviation, fires, engineers, whatever. That division organization has to be able to operate and support its maneuver BCTs to get them to the fight so they can there in that close tactical fight. So here at Fort Benning, we are all in on the division as the unit of action. We believe in that concept, and we understand that for that to happen, for divisions to be able to do division things, how do we enable that? Well, part of that enabling is moving IBCTs to M's and L's. So this is a snapshot of what we think that reinvestment strategy could look like. As you see there, first of all, reinvesting into the division, providing cavalry squadrons out of the M and the L as we move from I's to M's and L's, moving cavalry to the division level to provide that reconnaissance at echelon, moving artillery from the brigades, those composite artillery battalions, back to division to help build DIVARTY, invest in the fires fight, moving engineers out of the BEBs to help build engineer organizations at echelons above brigade, possibly include protection brigade. With those elements moving up, we reinvest in the division support battalion, making sure that it can support these new divisional units that are moving to that organization. And then finally, number 3 there, you talk about reinvesting in emerging formations, emerging technology, specifically in this case, a mobile protected firepower platform, whatever that may turn out to be, but having that battalion organization at division to be able to train, resource, and provide those formations back to brigades when necessary to task, organize, and give them the capability of long-range direct fire. The last thing I would say is investing in the BCTs. We didn't reduce any of the infantry capabilities inside those BCTs. The infantry battalions remain as they are today. So companies, rifle companies, weapons companies, what we did is, and I'll get into that, is we added the cross-domain platoons, and we can talk about that in a moment. What I would like to say also is the separate IBCTs, specifically 173rd and 425, we do not see them transforming necessarily because they do not have a parent division to reinvest. So the capabilities that would be in those IBCTs, fires, engineers, cavalry, et cetera, there's nowhere for it to go to a next higher level for that to be provided back down. So at this point, those 2 separate BCTs will remain IBCTs. Part of this strategy, as I said, we had multiple FDUs into the TA process. Here at Fort Benning, we have 6 FDUs currently somewhere in the TA process. And starting from left to right on the slide, the resource pool we're talking about primarily is the cavalry organizations, both infantry and armor BCTs. And that pool helps provide spaces to build, first of all, the MPF companies and then the MPF battalion headquarters. It helps build armor and infantry division cavalry, then it helps build the M and the L BCT. So those are the 6 FDUs currently in the process. And all those FDUs are interdependent, as it says there, self-contained. It's not necessarily an a la carte menu to pick. So what I mean by that is if I say, hey, we're going to take cavalry squadrons out of IBCTs to pay for something else, what that effectively does is MPF, Light Reconnaissance Company, those bills now go to the larger Army to help build those organizations, as opposed to trying to keep all that right inside the maneuver portfolio. So a snapshot of what the current force looks like and what will look like when we get to the Army of 2030. What I will say going into this is the number of M's or L's has not been determined, so we don't have a decision from Army senior leadership on how many of each and where they will go. We have discussions on which formations would possibly be landing areas for M's and L's, but at this point we don't have a decision on how many L's, how many M's, and what divisions they would go to. That being said, as I mentioned before, on the left-hand part of the slide there, you can see, similar to what I talked about, the reinvestment strategy, you have formations that are leaving the IBCT and the FDUs that supported that move and where they would move out to. And then for the M and the L designs there in the middle and the right-hand part of the slide, you can see some of the significant changes for the M and the L. So for the M BCT, the primary change is it's adding ISVs, infantry squad vehicles, to the rifle companies. Therefore, every rifle squad would have the ability to have its own ISV, thereby making the MBCT 100% mobile. Currently, the IBCT is about 60% mobile. The 40% of that is not resides in the rifle company. So all of the combat power has no assigned seat to sit in. And previous changes to the IBCT structure, specifically in the BSBs, we lost truck companies, we lost the capacity to haul infantry soldiers from point A to point B that were organic to the BCT. So that further exacerbated the problem of not being tactically mobile. So the MBCT solves that gap, bridges that gap by providing ISVs to all the rifle companies. So that's the first major change there. The second change there in the middle in the green box, the Light Reconnaissance Company. So Lisco Gap 11 is reconnaissance at echelon. If you take squadrons of cavalry out of the IBCT and move it to division to provide division cavalry, This also provides a capability at the brigade level, so you have reconnaissance from division to brigade down to battalion, and we don't gap it at division as we currently do task organized wide. The next change is, while we moved the engineers out along with the headquarters, what did not leave at this point is the signal company and the military intelligence company still providing those capabilities to the brigade, and that allows the brigade commander to have that capacity and capability organic to his or her formation. Lastly, the light support battalion, as you see there, is restructured to be able to support the formation that's there. The requisite amount of mechanics to support the increasing number of ISV platforms that come in, as well as right-sizing all of the enablers in that to support the size and capability of the MBCT. The LBCT, exact same structure as the M minus the ISVs. So that is truly a light brigade. I'd like to highlight the one change for both of them, the real only true growth that happened to the both of these formations, which is you see there below the infantry battalions is the cross-domain platoon. Understanding that the future is autonomous systems, is robotic systems, and trying to lean forward and making sure that we embrace that, we created a cross-domain platoon at the battalion level. What that does, it allows the battalion commander to have access to those systems without having to provide that system, whatever it may be, whether it's a SMET, RCV, a type of SUAS, into a rifle company, rifle platoon, taking infantry soldiers away from doing infantry jobs. This now also provides the ability for that platoon to conduct training necessary to operate those systems, and allows the battalion commander to employ them where he or she believes they are best suited to accomplish the mission. So specifically, again, here's a little more of an idea of the MBCT, what it's optimized for. If you understand that if it's now tactically 100% tactically mobile, has very good operational mobility, it is very well suited for open rolling terrain, for lightly wooded terrain, for open desert, those types of environments where it can get quickly and rapidly from point A to point B. And as you see in the little OV schematic in the middle of the screen, where it moves to seize key terrain to prevent reinforcement of enemy forces to the main battle area there. And it has its characteristics, as I mentioned before, remain true, but I would like to highlight the fourth one down there, the commonality of vehicles. Instead of having a variety of vehicles parked in a motor pool, we are capitalizing on the ISV being not only a light vehicle across the formation, but also all of the benefits that the ISV brings in its maintenance and a simplicity of maintenance for that force. And again, for the LBCT, not having the burden of vehicles moving with it, it can be put into very complex terrain, subterranean. Again, going back to what General Abrams had just spoken about, subterranean terrain, dense urban terrain, island jungles, things of that nature, where you don't necessarily have the ability or a capability to put vehicles into those locations. As you see there in the OV at the bottom corner of the screen, conducting an air insertion, vertical envelopment onto an island to address the enemy situation there, seize key terrain in the form of the airfield, allowing for other operations to continue. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the comments here. I have a few folks here in the room, but if there's questions out there, I'd be happy to answer any questions and have any discussion about this. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned the decisions on numbers of L's and M's. What's determining that, and when do we expect that to occur?
Yes, sir. So the question was, if we were to Hiller, is how many L's and M's, what's determining that? What are the factors that go into making the determination on how many and where those L's and M's would be? So I would say right now, we rely on ForceCom and the DAG3 to help us understand that. We make recommendations, but a lot of those recommendations, to be quite honest with you, based on fielding of equipment, who's ready to receive that equipment. We look at the rearm model, understanding what forces may or may not be ready to go through the transition, go through the net training, and to one, give up. And it has to, I would say it has to account where those soldiers are going as they move out of the brigade. So I think FORCECOM and DAG3 have to lead that discussion. As far as guidance, I do talk, we in the ACM talk a lot with division commanders, with 18th Corps and the command team there, as well as some of the FORCECOM, force design folks, to try and understand where we think that's going to go. But there's been no decision. General McGee and General Donahue at Fort Campbell and Fort Bragg have put in their votes on what they believe their division should look like. And General Kurilla has taken that into account. I know General Garrett has heard those comments, but no feedback as yet has come back to us. I'm sure at some point going through the AROC process will help make an official determination on where fielding would happen.
Just one.
Yes, sir.
Has there been any discussion on L configuration and any increase in aviation within those?
Let me bounce back here. So the short answer is yes, sir. And the division redesigns obviously are coming out of TPO-EAB up at Fort Leavenworth with Colonel McHugh and his team up there. However, as they design the JFE division, Joint Forcible Entry divisions, the aviation portion for the 82nd, they've determined what that should be. The 101st, going back to its air assault, pre-modularity air assault roots, has an increase in rotary lift capability that the 82nd does not have. And I don't know for sure, but I would believe that the 25th and the 10th would have something much less than the 101st, probably more along the lines what the 82nd would have. I don't know what the numbers are in the configuration, but the 101st would have a larger aviation brigade size than the 82nd because of its air assault potential. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is there any time frame for the decision on AROC to make a decision on that?
Well, currently the M and the L is in the TAA process, so we're not near that point yet. So we're waiting. Both FDUs are at with the G3, waiting to move forward to go through the rest of that process. So the 25, 29 TA process, they've racked and stacked the FDUs they want to consider for that and which one should be deferred. Right now, M&L was part of that process, so we're just waiting on that to run its course. Okay. Any other questions? I appreciate everybody's time today. Again, Colonel Ryan Morgen, ACM IBCT. I'm on the net. If you have any questions, please come up on the line and let me know. I'd be happy to have the conversation with anybody. Thank you for your time.